house was unusually quiet that afternoon, the kind of silence that makes even the hum of the refrigerator sound impossibly loud. Sunlight slipped through the half-closed blinds, dust motes swirling lazily in the beams, and for the first time in months, the teenager found himself with no obligations, no rules, and no one else home. School break had started, and with his parents away on a last-minute business trip, the house was entirely his. He wandered from room to room, basking in the rare sense of freedom. No chores left to do, no homework, no one to call him downstairs for dinner. Just the echo of his own footsteps on the hardwood floor. Back in his bedroom, he dropped onto the bed, phone in hand, about to scroll for the 100th time through social media, when something caught his eye. There, wedged against the glass, was a small, oddly folded note stuck to the inside of his window. He frowned. Had someone been in his room? He couldn't remember seeing it earlier. Curious, he stood up and peeled the crisp white paper from the window. The handwriting was neat and precise, almost too perfect, as if someone had taken great care with every letter. He unfolded the note, expecting a joke, a meme, maybe even a coupon his mom left behind. But what he found instead was a list, titled Only the Rules. Rule 1. Lock all windows by 11:59 p.m. Rule 2. Never turn off all the lights. Rule 3. Don't look at the hallway mirror after midnight. Rule 4. Don't respond if you hear knocking. Rule 5. If you see yourself outside, hide. He stared at the list, a smile tugging at the edge of his mouth. It had to be a prank. Maybe his friend Alex, who loved horror movies and ghost stories, had snuck into his room during the last sleepover. He read the rules again, this time aloud, their absurdity making him laugh. Lock all the windows by midnight. Never turn off the lights. Don't look at the mirror. It sounded like something ripped straight out of a cheap urban legend. He shook his head and tossed the note onto his desk, already composing a sarcastic text to Alex about his creepy sense of humor. The rest of the evening passed in that same easy, carefree way. He made a frozen pizza, played games, and watched a few episodes of his favorite show. If the rules lingered in the back of his mind, he ignored them. The house, after all, was still just a house. There were no monsters here, no ghosts lurking in the shadows. Just him and the familiar creaks and groans of old pipes settling as night fell. By the time he got ready for bed, he'd forgotten about the note entirely. He brushed his teeth, yawned, and out of habit, went from room to room, flicking off the lights, the kitchen, the living room, the hallway. Each plunged into darkness with the simple flip of a switch. Back in his bedroom, he hesitated for a moment, recalling Rule 2, but shook his head again. He couldn't very well sleep with the light on. He climbed into bed, the house now dark and quiet, and pulled the covers up to his chin. It was deep into the night when something woke him, a sudden, sharp brightness, like lightning caught in a bottle. He blinked, groggy, and saw the faint outline of light spilling in from under his door. He glanced at his phone. 2:47 a.m. He tried to remember if he'd left the hallway light on, but he was sure he'd turned everything off. He slid out of bed, toes curling against the cool floor, and padded over to the door. He opened it just a crack and peered out. The hallway lights were flickering, buzzing with a strange, erratic life. A chill ran down his spine, but he told himself the wiring must be faulty. He stepped out, listening for any sound that might explain the lights, but the house was silent. Then, from the kitchen, came the soft, unmistakable sound of footsteps. Not the gentle creak of the house settling, but deliberate, measured steps pacing back and forth. His heart hammered in his chest. He called out, half hoping for his parents' voices, but the only answer was silence. He tiptoed toward the kitchen, every instinct screaming at him to turn back. But curiosity carried him forward. The footsteps stopped abruptly as he reached the doorway. He peeked inside. Empty. Nothing but the faint smell of his leftover pizza and the persistent hum of the refrigerator. He released a shaky breath. Maybe he was just jumpy, his mind playing tricks on him in the dark. He turned, ready to head back to bed when he caught sight of his own reflection in the hallway mirror. He froze. Rule 3 flickered through his mind. Don't look at the hallway mirror after midnight. He tried to look away, but his eyes were drawn to the glass, where his reflection stared back at him. Only, there was something wrong. His reflection wasn't moving with him. It stood perfectly still, eyes wide and unblinking. A faint, almost imperceptible smile curling at the corners of its mouth. He spun around, half expecting to find someone behind him, but the hallway was empty. He looked back at the mirror, just his own pale face, nothing more. He shook off the unease and hurried toward his room, telling himself it was just his imagination, a trick of the light and his tired mind. As he entered his room, he caught a movement from the corner of his eye. He turned toward the window, heart pounding. There, just beyond the glass, was a face, his own face, staring in at him from the darkness outside. The hair was the same, the eyes the same, but there was something hollow about the expression, something wrong. It smiled, and the smile didn't reach its eyes. He stumbled back, breath catching in his throat, the rules from the note racing through his mind. If you see yourself outside, hide. He backed away, searching for a place to conceal himself, as the figure outside pressed its hands against the glass, its smile widening, impossibly wide. The silence in the house suddenly felt suffocating, every shadow deeper than before. The rules had been more than a prank, and now, with his own face watching from the night, he realized too late that some warnings are meant to be followed. To be continued. At exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, the world outside is silent. The kind of silence that seems to press against the windows and seep beneath the doors. Most people are deep in sleep, adrift in dreams. But he is wide awake, staring up at the ceiling, counting the seconds until dawn. The air feels heavier at this hour, and every sound is amplified. That's why when the doorbell rings, once, sharp and precise, it's as if a jolt of electricity runs through his veins. He freezes, heart pounding in his chest, breath caught in his throat. No one should be visiting at this hour. No one should even be awake. A memory flashes in his mind. The list of rules taped to the wall beside his bed, each one written in careful, ominous letters. Rule 1, do not answer the door after midnight. Rule 2, turn off all lights by 2:59 a.m. Rule 3, if you hear the bell, do not move. Rule 4, never respond to knocking. Rule 5, never break the sequence. He remembers reading them before going to bed, dismissing them as some old superstition, a relic from the house's previous owner. But now, in the deep, oppressive quiet, the words seem to pulse with urgency. He slides silently from his bed, heart hammering, and crawls beneath it, pressing himself flat against the cold floorboards. Dust tickles his nose, but he clamps a hand over his mouth, desperate to remain silent. The house is still, but something feels wrong. It's the kind of wrong that prickles at the back of the neck, that makes the shadows seem deeper, the darkness more complete. Then, from downstairs, the door creaks open. Not the soft, everyday creak of old hinges, but a slow, deliberate groan that scrapes through the silence. He squeezes his eyes shut, willing himself to disappear, to become part of the floor. But then he hears it. Breathing. Heavy, ragged, impossibly loud. It fills the room, echoing off the walls, a presence he cannot see but can sense with every fiber of his being. The breaths are uneven, as if whatever has entered is savoring the moment, tasting the fear in the air. He presses himself even tighter against the floor, praying for the dawn, for sunlight to banish whatever has come. But the breathing lingers, slow and steady, a chilling lullaby in the dark. When morning finally comes, he is shaken, exhausted, but alive. He tries to convince himself it was a dream, a product of an overactive imagination fueled by late-night anxiety. But the memory of that breathing haunts him, and the rules on the wall now seem like a lifeline rather than a joke. The next night, dread coils in his stomach as the clock ticks toward 3. He follows the rules meticulously, lights out before the designated time, doors locked, body still as the hour approaches. The world outside is silent again, but now the silence feels like a warning. As the minutes crawl past, he listens, every nerve on edge. Then, just as he begins to hope that the worst is over, there's a knock. Not at the front door this time, but closer, on the wall beside his bed. It's a slow, deliberate rhythm, each knock spaced perfectly apart. Rule 4, never respond to knocking. He remembers the rule, clings to it, but the fear is overwhelming. The knocking grows louder, more insistent, until he can't bear it anymore. In a moment of panic, he screams back, his voice raw with terror. "Go away!" The knocking stops. Silence returns, but it's a different kind of silence. Thick, suffocating. Then, from the darkness, a whisper slips through the air, so close it feels like it's inside his own mind. "Wrong move." The words hang there, chilling him to the bone. The next day he tries to convince himself it was another nightmare. But when he checks his phone, his blood runs cold. There, in his photo gallery, are pictures he doesn't remember taking. Each one is a snapshot from the night before, images of him sleeping, vulnerable and unaware. The angle suggests the camera was held inches from his face. His hands tremble as he scrolls through them, heart pounding in his ears. Desperate for answers, he calls his therapist. He pours out everything. The rules, the doorbell, the breathing, the knocking, the photos. The therapist listens in silence, then finally speaks, her voice flat and emotionless. "The rules aren't for protection," she says. "They're traps. The more you follow, the more real it becomes." He doesn't understand. She continues. "The entity feeds on ritual and belief. Every time you obey a rule, you give it more power. You make it more real. Rule 5 was the final step. It wasn't a warning. It was a summoning." He feels the world tilt beneath him, the ground suddenly unsteady. The rules, which he thought would keep him safe, have instead invited something into his life, something that grows stronger with every act of compliance, every repetition of the ritual. He's caught in a web of his own making, each rule a strand that binds him tighter. Night falls again, and he's trapped by a sense of inevitability. He sits on the edge of his bed, the list of rules crumpled in his hand. The house is silent, but the silence no longer feels empty. It's full of expectation, a living thing that waits for him to make the next move. He tries to resist, to break the cycle, but the rules have a gravity of their own, pulling him back again and again. At exactly 3 o'clock, there's a knock. This time, it's not on the door or the wall, but inside the room itself. The sound is impossibly loud, shaking the very air. He freezes, every muscle locked in terror. The knocking continues, relentless, filling the room with its terrible rhythm, and then everything goes black. A final message lingers in the darkness, cold and merciless. You followed all the rules. It thanks you for the invitation,